What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Castle Crush. In today's video, I'm going to show you the latest deck I've been playing, and it is an all legendaries deck, or at least I'm using all of my legendaries. Since we've last played, I think I've picked up a couple of extra legendaries via the tournament. So I'm still missing the Skull Queen. That's a legendary I do not have. I still am missing the Angel and Epic I do not have. Let's see what else. I know I'm missing at least one more legendary somewhere here. We're still missing the Skull King, which is a very low level, low castle level epic that I still don't have. And we are still missing the Mage, so maybe that's it. Am I just missing those three cards? Let's take a look at the deck here, and I'm going to scroll all the way over. So it's these four cards that I'm missing three epics. So I'm just missing one legendary. So otherwise, we have all of the legendaries in our deck here. This is the deck I've been playing, and it has gotten me all the way up to my highest trophy level, which you can see here. So the idea of the deck, we have some low, all right, let's start with the low mana cards, right? So the bomb is largely just to counter Reapers, sometimes an early Skeleton Swarm. It also combos really well with the Black Witch. The Black Witch can turn their creatures into skeletons. You can use the bomb to destroy them all very quickly. So that combo works really well also. But mainly the bomb counters Reaper decks. I think I have an example of that in the videos we'll show. The crystals help us get up to speed a little bit faster because our deck is pretty high cost, I think. Arrows defense, Inferno for defense. Obviously, the Black Witch is a defensive card. The Demon sometimes is used for defense, of course. And the Vampire works for both defense and sometimes offense. So we also have our other legendary cards, the Storm Elemental, the Shaman, the Archer Queen, and the Phoenix, and three of those do range damage, so that's pretty good. The Archer Queen, the reason we have the Archer's Tribe in is because we have the Archer Queen in. I think it doesn't really make any much sense to play the Archer Queen without playing some other archers, and they combo really well because the Archer Queen increases the attack by 48 for our archers. So our archers attack right now is 39, so we get an additional 48 when the Archer Queen is out, giving us 77 total attack, which is pretty strong for archers. And of course we have our dragon. Okay, so let's take a look at a few games played using this deck. I'm even going to show you some losses. Normally we often just show wins, but in this one I'll show some wins and some losses. Okay, so let's watch this game. You can see we're at 3,489 trophies. That's the highest trophy count we've ever gotten to. All right, so the crystal, of course, is always good. We want to play that right away. And you want to play the Storm Elemental back against your castle almost always so that it can gain strength as it stays out on the board. My plan is to back that up with a vampire if my opponent tries to kill it. But so far my opponent is just kind of waiting and letting it get there. And my opponent plays skeletons. Nothing I can do about that. I go ahead and play the shaman in the middle lane, trying to throw my opponent off a bit. I don't really want to let them know where my shaman is. Play bombs. Unfortunately, they played another set of skeletons right behind it. I didn't really see that coming. But you can see our shaman is already doing a substantial amount of damage to their castle. They do get the Black Witch in time, and unfortunately my shaman goes out. I use the arrows, but my opponent is playing Resurrection. So wow, this is news to me here. So now I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to deal with this sort of Resurrection deck? Because my opponent's probably going to be able to bring a lot of their cards back. So the Vampire will do okay against these skeletons. And now I see, okay, my opponent is playing a Resurrection Specter deck. I have a pretty good idea of what they're going for now. The Archer Queen is going to do okay. She's going to take this out. The thing is, my opponent can play Resurrection here, but it's not really going to help them much. So the dragon comes out, and we're going to counter that with. I'm going to go ahead and play the Skull Queen, which really, unfortunately, I mean, it gets rid of our Archer Queen, but our Archer Queen wasn't that strong anyway, and I thought it was better to get rid of their dragon rather than to take it head on, because now I can play my dragon They did use Resurrection to bring their dragon back, but when you use Resurrection, your creature comes back very weak. They could have used it again here, but they waited too long, and now they're going to be able to use Resurrection, unfortunately, to bring back all those skeletons I just killed. But the Phoenix will take care of the ones in the top lane without much trouble. They can keep resurrecting them all they want. And the dragon will also take care of this. So now we've pretty well got my opponent in pretty bad shape. I just need to make sure that top lane is secure. I do so with the Black Witch bomb combo. And now we've pretty well got our opponent in a bad spot. They're running low on cards that are useful to play. My opponent's deck, we know, runs really well when there's lots of creatures out, and they just don't have lots of creatures out, and I've got plenty of things to kill skeletons if they try to play them now. And this is going to be it for my opponent as the dragon approaches the castle. It's all over. So the key against those Specter decks is you want to get your dragon out and use those kinds of cards. I mean, because skeletons can give you a lot of trouble with this deck. We don't have a lot of great skeleton defense other than bomb, inferno, and arrows. But we don't have things like executioner, or mage, which just totally wreck those kinds of decks. We don't have either of those, so we have to use some other things to deal with skeletons. Okay. So that was one. Let's go to the next one, which was, now here is an example of losing to a Specter deck. Specter deck with Resurrection. You can see this deck is pretty strong. And I think, as I recall here, I made some mistakes early on. I also think I didn't have the best of cards to start with. I mean, you don't really want to start with a dragon. Let's see. Let's see if I can remember this one here. So a pretty typical play by our opponent. They're going to play the skeletons. And my typical play here is to just bomb. Unfortunately, my opponent has Resurrection and is able to get it out quick enough that all the skeletons come back and my bomb is kind of wasted. And I don't really have any of the cards I want to deal with skeletons. And so I played, unfortunately, if I'd known that my opponent, that I was going to draw the Inferno, I wouldn't have played the Shaman in the top lane, but they got another Resurrection, and I'm in really bad shape. I really need arrows to get some control of things. I don't have that, so I try the archers, but I don't really have a lot of options. Okay, now I finally get the arrows, so I think I'm doing good, but the problem is I know my opponent is going to be coming with something strong behind it. Okay, but there I was pretty lucky. If I feel like, okay, I'm back in the game, but what to play here? And they go Skull King, and now we're in big trouble. They finally get my dragon back, but I really can't control all of these lanes. There's just too much happening. I don't have combo cards with my Black Witch, so my Black Witch can take out something, but ultimately she's gonna die. And that's all there is to it here. This was just a complete beating by my opponent. I let them get too many cards on the board, and when you let them get too many cards on the board, you're in big trouble. That's always the case when you're playing against these kinds of Specter decks. Okay, so we lost that one. Here is another game we played. As I recall, the idea I think behind this player's deck was to just get a giant Black Knight out there and with giant growth and nature heal and use it to run you over. Otherwise, they weren't doing a whole lot. So again, the Storm Elemental is a nice one to play. Because the reason I like the Storm Elemental is it just gives your opponent some annoyance. They have to do something about it eventually. They can't just let it sit there. If I play an archers there or skeletons, they might be able to just let that sit there for a while. But if they let the Storm Elemental sit there too long, it just becomes too powerful, and then it becomes unstoppable. So that forces your opponent to deal with it. Here, a pretty obvious play. The Ape Pirate, one of my most hated cards, comes out, so I play the Archer Queen to deal with that. And of course, I played that Archer Queen after I got my archers out because I want to strengthen. Here, I've pardon me, I played the Vampire because I just wanted to play a card. I have too many cards in my hand, and my opponent isn't really doing anything. And so, of course, I countered their Black Witch with the Inferno. And of course, now I know my opponent's playing Black Witch, so I'm sort of holding back a little bit, waiting to see. I'm doing enough damage to my opponent that I don't have to play something right here. So I'm just waiting. I'm waiting until make sure I have plenty of mana in my hand. And I just don't have to do a whole lot. I'm a little surprised my opponent did so little. Of course, they were holding 2 Giant Growths and an Archer Queen, which are things they really couldn't do anything with. Okay, so that was a win. That was a pretty quick one. Okay, so here is another loss. This time it is to a Reaper deck. This one here, yeah. And so, like most things with the Reaper decks, if your opponent has a good draw and you don't have a good draw, you're probably going to lose. And this one, I was able to stop the first attack, but I was not able to stop the second, unfortunately. And so, my opponent plays the statue, and I go, okay, probably a Reaper deck. I really want to get rid of the statue. There's not a lot I can do yet. So I decide to go ahead and play the demon to try to get rid of the statue. Unfortunately, they use the standard bearer to keep the statue in place. And now I know I'm definitely facing a Reaper deck, so I have my Inferno and arrows ready. And I use that combination to take it out. They did get pretty fortunate with a Metamorph there. I'm still in big trouble because I've got this stinking statue right up against my castle along with a standard bearer. And so I do manage to eventually get rid of that. And now I'm going to try to get rid of whatever else is there. And I finally got a bomb and a vampire, which is going to allow me to clear away this. But unfortunately, my opponent got just the cards they needed, the Reaper and the Protection, and I couldn't get a Black Witch out in time. I probably, if I'd played that a little better, would have been a little better prepared. It's really tough when they're right up against your castle to even get that Black Witch out. So, I mean, the real best way to beat that deck is not, you just can't let them get anything up on your castle because they can kill you so quickly, as we saw there. Okay, so that was a loss. I think I do have a win. I do have a win against the Reaper deck, so I'll show you how I played that one a little bit differently. So here is the second to last game we'll show in this video with our all legendary deck. Obviously, burning the dragon. We'll be able to play that for a long time. And, I think this deck is really fun to play. So here I'm deciding, okay, I'm going to go ahead and just counter the pirate with the shaman. Shaman will have no problem taking out the pirate, but unfortunately it does weaken my shaman, and now my opponent knows where my shaman is. Just getting your legendary cards out, like the Phoenix, is usually just a good strategy, just because they're difficult to deal with, and that's kind of the idea of this deck, is that everything I play is just kind of annoying for my opponent to deal with. They have to deal with it. So here, I probably should, if I could have done this again, I would have reversed those. I would have played the demon in the top lane, and I would have played the vampire down in the bottom lane up against the golem, because the vampire would have eaten that golem up really well. So I decided I've got to get rid of this Archer Queen. My opponent quickly counters that, but I drew a demon. They counter with a meteor. Okay, so here, and again, my opponent's hit me with a couple of meteors now, which is a little annoying. But now I'm going to go ahead and get my Storm Elemental going and Inferno that lane. Luckily for me, my opponent played a pirate in that lane at the exact moment. And I'm doing pretty well here. I've got control of all lanes. I've got space. That was a great timing with the shaman, because it made the demon take out the shaman's duplicate. And now is the right time to play the dragon to counter this mud elemental. My opponent plays another mud elemental. Now what I'm afraid of here is something like Giant Growth and Nature Hero, which a lot of people do with mud elemental, but my opponent does not have this here. And at this point, we have such control over a couple of lanes, and we're rebirthing the Phoenix here. my opponent's in a lot of trouble, and I think they just give it up here. Even though I mean they could have played some things, but they would have just died instantly. So that was the win, and again that's kind of the idea of the deck. You just are constantly pestering your opponent with things that they have to deal with until they can't deal with them all. And all of the legendary creatures, you really have to deal with them, because if you don't deal with them, it's that they probably can kill you. So, okay, so there's that one, and I will finally will end on this last game against a Reaper deck that's pretty similar to the one we played before. This person appears to be in the Drunken Sailors clan, which I believe is the Gaming Vikings clan. And it's a Reaper deck with Mana Ritual. You don't see that a lot, but there are many varieties of Reaper decks. Of course, I don't know that. I see that my opponent's played Mana Ritual, and I think, oh, they're not playing a Reaper deck. But then when I see Standard Bearer come out, I go, oh, Reaper. A lot of people like this. They like to play the Standard Bearer first, and then they like to tank the Reaper right behind it. But I was ready with the bomb. Now my opponent has another Reaper and throws the protection down. This is like great fear, but fortunately the Shaman is actually quite good at dealing with Reapers, especially when they don't have anything tanking in front of them like the Standard Bearer in the way. And because they're also moving slow. Okay, so the vampire is great against these spike statues because it just regains the health from the statue. And one of the other things that I played there was Archer's Tribe. I wanted to get that out quickly because Archer's Tribe works well because it fills up all the lanes. Having played Reaper decks in the past, I know that filling up the lanes is pretty important. In terms of because if you're trying to win with a Reaper and the lanes are full in front of you, or if there's no lane to go to, it's really hard to break through. So yeah, I've played with Reaper decks in the past where that's exactly what happens. My opponent plays an early Archer's Tribe or an early Skull King, and it's like, uh-oh, I can't get through because there's too many creatures in the way. So Reaper decks really thrive on an open lane, and so when you saw in the game I lost, my opponent took advantage of the one lane that they had access to, and even though I was dominating down the other lanes, they came crashing through the middle lane and beat me. In this game, I made a point to try to control all three lanes. That way, my opponent didn't have any option, even if it was just with some small cards like Archer's Tribe. By controlling those lanes, it made it much more difficult for my opponent to win. Okay, that's it for this video, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked the video, give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.